Hey everyone, welcome back to Tactical Magic. This is Molly Mandelberg, your host, and I am excited to be bringing an episode to you today that is about healing. And while we talk about healing in many different ways on this show, I think it's never gonna run dry. I think there's always gonna be more layers for us to talk about when it comes to healing, and especially looking at our lives and being willing to give up making ourselves wrong. There's a lot of things that can happen in our lives where we can make a story up about it. And there's also usually an alternate interpretation where we can sort of claim our power back from anything that has happened in our lives and really bring light to the shadow side of ourselves that may have come through there and come to a new place of empowerment. And I have an expert on that here with me today. So hang tight. We'll be back in just a sec.
It's not just about mastering technology. It's not just about brand or messaging. It's not just about making more money. It's about showing up in a big way so your people can find you. This is about bringing your most wild and authentic self into the hustle and grind. Welcome to Tactical Magic, a business strategies podcast for the warrior goddess entrepreneur.
Awesome. So Marisa Moments is the universe's best kept secret until now. She has been forged in fire and gifted divine connections in order to share her healing with others. She is angel by day, beast by night, incorporating her shadows to work for her. She is a divine healing force to be reckoned with and is ready to help guide you back to your divinity, power, and abundance. Welcome to the show, Marisa.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your journey of healing and how you found yourself doing the work that you're doing now.
Okay, well, it's been a wild ride. Let me just start out by saying that. I'd say that I've always been a very intuitive person. I just never knew what that meant, right? As a kid, we don't know what it means to be intuitive. So I would have moments where I would see spirit and have engagements where I thought it was more of a drop dead Fred type situation, right? My invisible friend. And of course, the people that were surrounding me, they weren't quite familiar with the spiritual journey and everything that comes along with it. So there's been a lot of kind of self-teaching opportunities, moments for growth where I just kind of shadow other people and figuring it out along the way. Now, long story long, when I was probably around in my 30s, I actually had an experience with a good friend of mine at the time where she had what her father-in-law had passed away, someone I had never met. And I was able to describe him, the circumstances, the room in which he was in. And then at that point, something kind of clicked and I was like, oh, there might be something more to this, right? Because how would I know these things? And as that kind of expanded, I just started to look into my own personal moments, hence Marisa Moments, and exploring and shining the light on those darkest times in order to kind of heal myself. And as I do it, then I kind of share my personal experience with others so that way they can take what resonates and apply it to their own lives and situations. Yeah. So like I said, it's been a wild ride. And of course, along the way, I've had, the near-death experiences, what I call the falling ice brick of 2013 on my head, and all of these random moments that happened in between that kind of forged me into the person that I am today.
Yeah, I love that you call it forging, like you're this like weapon of empowerment that had to go through some flame and fire to be crafted. And I think that point of view, probably a lot of people listening to this show specifically are down with that. And also I feel like there's a huge invitation inside of there that the things that you go through that are designed to either make you or break you, that we have the choice, that we have the option to look at them in different ways, to reframe our story around that experience. So it is actually part of the thing that turned us into a creature of beauty and power and potency rather than something broken or wrong or messed up in some way. Like, for example, there were many, many years of my life where I was wounded and broken because of the trauma that I underwent with my stepfather growing up. And then I came to a place of recognition that I would not be anywhere near the powerful person that I am if I hadn't gone through that, especially at that young age. And by recognizing that, I got to sort of like pull the tendrils of my power back from blaming him or blaming my mom for marrying him or blaming my dad for not saving me from him or whatever the story was that meant I was wrong and broken because this experience had happened, rather than it being the exact perfect forge for me to come out the other side as the person that I am now. And how maybe on some level I even chose that abuser or aggressor or experience without needing to label it as heavily before I even came into this body. Hey, yo, you're going to come in and be this guy, and I'm going to come in and be this one. And I'm going to figure out how to rise from that so that I can do the work I'm meant to do in this world and make the difference that I'm coming in to make this lifetime. So there's almost like, not to take away the like potency of the shit that can happen to us in this life. Like there's
100%.
trauma, there's pain, there's struggle. And is it possible that you can rise from that? And I think there's evidence that people have gone through similar things and risen from it in every single instance. So that then becomes sort of like our choice. So what are some ideas or inspiration for people to start looking at their lives differently or start claiming those moments back? What are some things you might suggest people look at or choose or do?
Well, personally, for me, I had to get to the state of exhaustion, right? Because it's so easy to keep trying to find excuses. It's easy to sit in like a victim seat, for lack of better phrasing, right? Because it's like, why did this happen to me? Why? And then you just get to a certain point where you're like completely fed up. And it often takes becoming completely fed up and just kind of getting to that still place where you start looking around like, wait a second, something's not right here. And then once you're in that seat, that's when you kind of start to take that ownership back. That's when you start to reclaim your power. And then piece by piece by piece. Now, it's definitely not easy, right? None of this is easy. It's not easy to highlight our trauma and our toxicity and to even take ownership in the situations and circumstances, but it's definitely possible. And it's a inch by inch type journey, right? If we start looking to make those leaps and bounds, that's where we kind of set ourselves up for failure out the gate, right? Because it's like, I know I want to eventually be in Europe. Now, how am I going to get there, right? So we have to just take each individual moment, really look at it, and be prepared to feel super uncomfortable about it, feel really shitty, for lack of better phrasing. Hope I can cuss on here.
Of course.
But just really feeling gross about it and recognizing that not all the blame or shame goes on the other party. Like you said, even though, yeah, we may have signed soul contracts, but even along this journey and as far along as I am, I still get to places where I'm like, really, Marisa, you signed that contract? Like, you agreed to do this? Like, this is something where they presented it to you and you were like, yeah, sounds good. That's awesome. I'm going to be a great warrior in the end. I think it's about like giving yourself permission to just be and looking at things and diving in deep and being willing to roll up your sleeves and do the hard work, right? It's like with different situations and circumstances that I've faced along my life, I'm still in the process of processing. And I think that's what the real bottom line is. You have to be well, first and foremost, you have to say F this, right? You have to get to that space. And then at the same time, you have to be able to say, now what can I do about it? And that's where you really get that power back. If there's nothing you can do about what has already happened, but what can I do about it? How can I transmute the situation or shift the situation to work for me? What can I take from what has happened from yesterday into today and tomorrow to give rocket boosters, right? Use it as fuel for your fire and just kind of take off from there and saying, yeah, this might have happened, but how can I prevent it from happening to a future generation? Or how can I use it to turn my purpose or my pain into my purpose?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. And you said like, it's not easy, but like keeping the shit around forever as keeping it as the wound instead of the transmutation of that wound. That's not easy either. And personally, I would rather challenge myself to find the thread that leads to a greater state of being, even if that's challenging, than to be aware of the pain, the struggle, the story that's not serving me, the way that it's harming myself, my relationships, my future, and not do a damn thing about it. And like also through that, totally acknowledging how challenging that could be, depending on the things that have happened. Like, this life is not a pleasure cruise. And that's what we think. Oh, like, oh, we weren't in a body and we're like choosing to come into a life. Like, they didn't say it was going to be a pleasure cruise. They said, hey, you're going to come into this planet. You're going to have like the entire spectrum of human experiences, every like bliss possibility and every like trauma possibility. And that breadth of experiences, what we were excited about. We were signing up for that. Like, yeah, wow, the contrast. We didn't come in getting promised a pleasure cruise, and then we got here like, damn, they lied to me. And now I have to experience like all this other stuff too. And I feel like if we can get that higher perspective, that there is such like intensity and beauty in every moment of our lives. And it's up to us to find the thread of like awe about it and possibilities from it. And that we each have, like, I wrote a whole book about it. You wrote a book about it. Like, we each have the potential to see our lives through many different lenses. And if we get stuck in one lens, that's what starts to cause us more pain, I think. Will you tell us a little bit about the book you wrote?
So the book I wrote is Daily Divinity Reminders. So basically what Daily Divinity Reminders are channeled messages that I receive every single morning from Spirit, right? I always say I know for sure it's from Spirit because I wake up so early that my brain hasn't completely turned on quite yet. It's like a 4 a.m., 4:30 in the morning type situation, right? Where it's these very intense reflections and opportunities for us to reflect on different circumstances and situations in our lives that say, hey, are you doing this? Maybe it's an assignment from Spirit to say, re-look into the past. Maybe you're viewing it wrong. Are you sure you're the victim in that moment? Or yes, maybe you are the victim in that moment. And what are we going to do about it now? Or, hey, don't forget that you need to just kind of kick your feet up. It's okay to like scroll the gram every now and then. Just don't make it your lifetime, right? So it's different messages that allow people to kind of go on their own healing journey. And the way that it's set up, though, is more of almost like a divinity tool. So there are no page numbers. Essentially, what you do is each morning or whenever you feel called to do so, you flip to whatever page you're called to, read the message and apply it to your life. You take what resonates and you leave what doesn't. And then that's going to start your journey towards your spiritual path or continue it, and also opens you up to communication with Spirit. So that way, maybe you start to learn for different signs and symbols to look out for. So that way you can become more in tune, because it's not about finding a specific guru necessarily that you follow behind. It's about what you can learn from them. So that way you can apply it to your own life.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like, I mean, that's just like picking a card from an oracle deck, or yeah, like using a magic eight ball to get your answers. Yeah, finding that there is some divine appointment in flipping a page to find the guidance that you're looking for, the wisdom that you're looking for. And also, that's just like an easy way to access support. Like, whether you have a therapist or a coach or a mentor or a guide, or whether you have like a divine connection to source, where, you know, I get woken up in the middle of the night with things I have to write down right now also. Whether you have something like that going on or not, there are so many ways in which we can funnel more wisdom, more guidance, more like divine truth into our lives. And sometimes giving it up to something like a book, or, you know, even just sitting down and writing messages, like asking for messages from your own guides or angels or whoever you want to call them. It can be an amazing way to access answers that you didn't necessarily have with your conscious, waking, rational, logical human mind beforehand. And yeah, there's insight in there for us to pivot with
For
in ways
sure.
that you might not come up with
What
on.
I've noticed is that so many of us are like just programmed out of it, right? Like we have those intuitive downloads, but then we dismiss it to, it's kind of what I always reference to is like, as we get older, our bodies change. So we can't eat the same things, right? But is that a part of our programming that says, oh, it's because I'm getting older? Or is it just because we're becoming more in tune with spirit that says we need to be more mindful of what we consume? And that can be based off of diet, it can be based off of entertainment, it can be based off of anything. So what I feel is like anything that kind of points us in that direction to say, hey, guess what, it's not just certain people that can access this information or this just divine insight or tap into our own divinity, then I'm all for it, right? Like you said, it's like oracle cards, but not everybody feels that they can use oracle cards, right? Even though they can't. That's just a nice little secret that we have, right?
Yeah.
You can use them, but it's all about intention and just kind of getting people started so that way they can continue on their own as opposed to leaning on a crutch permanently to say, I have to keep coming back to you. I have to keep coming back to you. Like, no, you don't. I mean, that's great,
Mhm.
but you don't have
Yeah.
to give people back their own power.
Yeah. I think that's one of the like clear signs I look for in a mentor or a guide for myself, and also who I would refer people to is, are you holding your role as a, oracle or as a guidance system as you have answers that other people don't have? If so, you're fucking wrong.
Right, 100%. It's like,
Yeah, because the
okay,
truth is
no.
we all have access to this, and we all, and
Yeah,
any leader I want to subscribe to is going to point me back to my truth, my power, my potency, my potential to access those answers myself. And that there's a point at which I will graduate from needing their support. And I want them to know that and guide me toward that point also, which
yeah,
is, yeah, that's a place of like true integrity when it comes to these kinds of gifts too, is recognizing, yes, you're special, you've accessed them, but and everyone has the potential to be that kind of special too, which is
yeah.
hugely important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I mean, I still honestly, I pinch myself every now and then because it's also a situation where you don't know what you don't know. Because for the longest, because, when you're these certain, I don't even, I feel sometimes uncomfortable calling them gifts, but for lack of better phrasing, when you have these gifts and they're just a part of who you are, you don't recognize and realize that not everybody else is as in tune. So you
Yeah.
just almost take it for granted, like, didn't you see that angel number? Or did that bird just talk to you too? Or, oh my God, did you look at the sky? Like it had different messages in the clouds, all of these different things that we just take for granted. So I get excited, honestly, when other people are able to pick up on their own messages just based off of, even if they just kind of rub shoulders with me, to say, oh, I didn't even think about that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yay, go ahead.
Yeah. I love that. And I love that being willing to share it with other people, which is, like you said, it was a process in itself, being willing to say, hey, okay, I get this isn't quite normal. And I'm willing to like show up in this way, even though people might think I'm weird or crazy,
Yeah.
that the invitation that is. And I want to like really point to this for anyone out there who is maybe overlooking the absolute miraculousness of the gifts that you have naturally or the gifts that you've honed through your life, that it is a huge gift to share that with people who can receive it. It's such an invitation for other people to start claiming and owning and acknowledging their own capacities, their own gifts, their own potential, just by being someone who's owning that.
Yeah.
That you invite other people to tap into more of themselves, not to mention the people you can help by actually sharing those gifts as a service that people can lean into. But yeah, I mean, I see my birthday is January 16. I see 116 everywhere. And I feel like it's
Nice.
always a clear sign of like, oh, you're moving the right direction. Oh, yep, this is something to pay attention to, or you got here at the right time. Like it's very grounding for me every time I see it. And I see it between like 2 and like 6 times a day, like license plates and
Oh,
clocks, and like it's
that's
everywhere.
awesome.
So it's not like a 444 angel number, although I see those sometimes too. But my
Right.
birthday is the one that calls out to me the most, which is fun. It feels like it's just for me.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, it's definitely like your angel, your divinity team is like, hey, check it out. This is
Yeah.
specifically for you. That's really cool. Because
Yeah.
even with angel numbers, I always say that when it comes down to it, any of these readings, because we can get caught up on what the true meaning is. But just like you said, it's about what it means for you. So when you see your birthday, it reminds you that, okay, I'm in alignment right now. I'm going in the right direction. So that's awesome. Whereas maybe somebody else sees the exact same numbers and they're like, hold on, I need to go a different direction. You know what I mean? So it's very personal, but that's amazing. And I love that for you.
Yeah, it's fun. So tell us a little bit more about your podcast, the work that you're doing. Yeah. How do you support people?
So my podcast is Healing While I Heal. And basically, what I do is I share real life stories and their healing translations. So, of course, we've all had different experiences, just like we kind of discussed at the open of the show. And but there is that transmutation piece that allows us to reclaim our power. So maybe, for instance, a story I recently shared was almost being used as a shield between another person and a very, I don't want to say vicious because that's not very kind, but a dog that was not very friendly at the time, right? And in that moment, it kind of made me go into a defensive mode where it was like I had to be the aggressor at that moment and I had to kind of back him down. And I was still being the protector as far as being the unintentional body shield, right? Now we can look at that moment and be like, dang, somebody held you up as a shield. Yes, that's how I definitely looked at it. When we get to the translation part, it's like, but I wouldn't have learned how to hold myself firm. I wouldn't have learned how to not be in a place of fear in those moments. I would never have learned how to back a dog down, essentially, right? If it was trying to come at me in attack mode. So I did pick up so much from that. Now, does that mean that it was a great situation and circumstance? Of course not. None of these moments are. But sometimes we do have to dive back into those shadows to realize, oh, let me just I'm gonna pick out the good stuff that I learned from it, but I'm also gonna acknowledge the painful stuff, and I'm gonna carry forward what I need to apply for the future because of course, Earth is just training grounds for our abundant possibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. And also lessons like that tend to keep coming until we're willing to like glean what happened and what it happened to us for, I think.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you're like, why do I keep dating the same kind of person? Until you're like, oh, there's a part of me that really needed to be met by this kind of partner. So I could acknowledge like this need I have or this tendency I have. And now that I'm willing to like own that, I can get that need met a different way, or I can like heal that part of me that had to be met by that kind of person. Okay, now I'm willing to be met by something else and be in a different kind of partnership than I've ever had before. But if we don't look at that pattern, if we don't acknowledge those pieces of the puzzle and like address them for ourselves and like be aware of them, then we have to keep having that pattern repeat. And unfortunately, it usually gets louder until it's a really big pain point, like you said, that fed up finally moment of willing to be aware now. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it is. You just definitely get to the point where you're like, you know what, F this. I'm tired of this. And when you say it, it's almost like a guttural thing, right? It's like, I'm tired of this.
Yeah.
And then that's when you're like, okay, now what? You get to that now what place, and then you start kind of moving forward. And then that's when the abundance comes. And the asterisk behind abundance always has to come in the fact that we view abundance as financial. Of course, that's going to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. But at the end of the day, the abundance is in being able to reclaim that power. It's being able to see the meaning behind situations and circumstances. It's being able to find joy in those little moments throughout the day and just understanding that there's so much more bliss out there than there is just drama and darkness and despair if we're willing to go into the shadows and bring out that light.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I know one of the fears that comes up is, oh, well, if I go into the light and have like an easier experience in my life, all my friends who are still bitching and moaning and complaining aren't going to want to hang out with me, or I'm not going to want to hang out with them. And then I'll be all alone. And that's a good reason not to do it or go there. There are people who will meet you on the other side of getting out of that trauma and drama state of existence. I promise you. And it's easier to find them once you start adding more light and awareness to your life. And I just want to say, like, this is a choice. And it's a choice that literally anyone can make. And if you are fed up with the shit that, yes, you might need to read a book about something. You might need to get a mentor or a therapist or support of some kind. You might need to turn off the music and turn on a podcast like this one, which, way to go if you're listening to this already. But it is a choice. It is a possibility. And it is literally up to you. You get to decide when enough is enough. And it's time to choose to change, or choose to evolve, or choose to heal the stuff so you can grow into the next version of you. And having been in a very, very stuck, limited, scared, substance abuse kind of place in my own life, and changing to who I see myself as now and what I know I'm capable of now. And I'm sure you've had, like you said, such a transformation in what your life experience was like before doing this kind of healing work and then stepping into it. It's worth it. And it's only you that can choose to go through it and choose to find what's on the other side. So from this end of the line, I double dog dare you, if this conversation has called to you. Yeah. And if you need support, definitely check out Marisa Moments podcast, Healing While I Heal. I had an episode on there too, which was very fun to do with you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, for sure. The challenge has been set, so now it has to be matched as far as anyone who is ready, willing, and able. And the truth is behind that, we often don't feel like we're ready or able, right? But once we start just kind of making that first little step, and even if, like you said, it's to get the book or to watch the podcast or to do whatever it is that you feel compelled to do, that's actually going miles above what you think. And like you said, if we could just take you in a time machine and show you who we were, the endless yesterdays,
Yeah.
then you would even recognize and say, you know what? Yeah, I can do this too, because it's not for certain restrictions apply. It's not a while quantities last. It's not a coupon, right? It's not a coupon code that you have to worry about when it's going to expire. You can start whenever, and you can just keep it moving. And everybody's path and journey looks different. So that's why we always take what resonates and we leave what doesn't. And just wait till we see meet the new us on the other side.
Yeah, totally. And there isn't like a point of arrival with that either. I just wanted to say, like, we're not at some endpoint where like, yeah, we did the work and just going to kick back now. Like, no, more, it becomes easier because you start to build this muscle of, oh yeah, I've faced something like this before and I'm going to find the other side of it. It starts to become like more natural, less confusing to face some part of you or some experience in life that you're like, dang, I don't like it. I want to know what else is possible from this, or who else I can be now that I'm aware of this way of being that isn't actually working for me. The capacity to choose that becomes like a muscle that you're strengthening, but the opportunities to choose that and to heal through things, those don't really subside all that much. You're still alive in a body. You're still going to have experiences that challenge you and that feel hard sometimes. But your resilience, your tenacity, your capacity for choosing that change becomes stronger and easier as you go along. And the experiences of bliss and joy that happen become more consistent, more possible, more accessible.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Nothing to it but to do it.
Yeah. So I wanted people to be able to find you. So where do they find your book? Where do they find your podcast? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, I always say I'm basically all over social media, everywhere you probably shouldn't be. But when you look me up, it's Marisa Moments. And that's Marisa with one S because there is only one me. And same thing goes for the website, Marisa Moments. Everything is Marisa Moments. I want to make it as simple as possible for anyone and everyone who is looking to begin their journey, continue their journey, or just look for somebody who's kind of going along with them or has been to where you're at right now and has come out on the other side. It's all about us walking together. It's not necessarily about who can follow whom or who can like whom or anything like that. It's about us doing this thing called life together and learning from one another and just helping each other as we go along.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Marisa.
Of course. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it has. And thank you everyone out there for listening. If this resonated at all, or if you thought of someone who might want to hear this episode, please forward it along to them. And while you're at it, if you want to subscribe, rate, and review the show, I would greatly appreciate it. But yeah, come back next week for another episode. Definitely check out Marisa's show and maybe listen to my episode over there. We revealed quite a lot of magic on that episode too. Yeah, whatever happens, keep asking big questions and taking bold action because you're here for a reason. Bye.